So in this video, I will be explaining difference between server-side sessions and JWT based sessions. If you watch this video till the end, you will get a clear idea how this JWT based session works and how server-side based session works. So let us try to understand the server-side sessions first of all, and then I will jump onto JWT based sessions. So we have a client over here, and then there is a server, and over here we have got databases. Okay. So this is one database and this is second database. So this is for the sessions and this is for saving the user data or app data, we can call it. And we have got this server over here, and then there is a client. So what happens is that client sends the request for the login page, server serves that login page, and then client enters username and password in that form and then posts the form. So at this point of time, server has got username and password. So what it does is that it checks in this database where that user information is available. It checks that this username and passwords are matching. If they are matching, what happens is that server goes to the session database and then creates a new session ID. Okay, and then that session ID will be stored in this session database along with this user name as well. So session ID is linked to the user ID, and also it will store this information like the expiry of the session, and if you want to store any other information in that session related to this user, they can store that information. Okay, so session ID is created. Now in the response, sends the session ID as well in the cookie. How the server can send the session ID to the client depends on different mechanisms. You can either send it in the cookie or in the JSON response. It depends, like there can be several combinations that are possible, but normally it will be sent in the cookie. So session ID is put into the cookie and then client gets it. And now what happens is that in every request that client is going to make to the server, that particular session ID or the cookie is going to be sent with that request. So client makes say 5 requests to say modify address. For example, it wants to modify address. So it sends the request. So at this point of time, session ID is sent. Okay. Then let us say this particular client wants to make the payment. So make payment. So this time also session ID is sent. So session ID is sent in every request. Every damn request, the session ID is being sent in that particular cookie along with other data. For example, if he wants to modify the address, it will send the address in the payload plus session ID in the cookie, or it can be sent in the header as well. Now, when the server gets this session ID, what happens is that every request that comes with this session ID, it is gonna go and look up in this session database. Okay, that is the first step that it has to take to find the user associated with that session ID. Because remember that when it created the session ID, it created that session ID and linked that session ID with the user. So it goes there, looks up that session ID. If it is available, it finds all the information of that user, and then it knows like, okay, this for this user we have to modify the address based upon that lookup. Then again for the making payment, again the session ID it has got, it goes to that sessions table, looks up that session ID is there or not. Once it gets that session ID, it knows what is the user ID linked to that session ID, and then it will process that request according to that information. So as you can see, every time it has to go there in the session database, look up that session ID there, and then based upon that it will grab that session information associated with that session. And obviously to modify the address, it has to go and save that information in this particular app database as well. So you can see that there are 2 types of databases are being used here in the traditional approach. One is session database and application database. Now there are several different implementations how we want to store the session. Sessions can be stored in the database, or it can be stored in the file. So there are several possibilities. But for the simplicity, I have taken this example with two databases. One is session database and another is application database. So as you can see in server side sessions, what happens is that for processing every request, it has to look up the sessions in session database first and then process the actual request. Like modify the address, it has to go and update the address table, whatever is there in that application database. As you can see, the main disadvantage of having the server side sessions is that this server at the server side, it has to look up this database, session database, for every request. And now we will see how the JWT based sessions solve this problem. So again, in JWT based sessions, we have client and server, and the major difference is that there is just one database. That's it, application database, or AppDB, we can call it. There is no session database. Okay, and that's why JWT based sessions are faster, because server doesn't have to go to the session database, look up that session, and then data associated with that session every request. Okay, because that information, that session information, is contained within JWT token. So let us see how this works. Again, client gets that login page, it enters the details, credentials, it goes to the server. On the server, what happens is that instead of creating the session ID, what server is going to do is it is going to create JWT token. Okay, so remember the difference. Instead of session ID, it is going to create the JWT token. Now the JWT token is created, and then it is passed to the client. Now again, to pass this JWT token from server to the client, there are two approaches. One is like using cookies, traditional approach, and another is like we can send it in the payload, or we can send it the response headers. So there are several possibilities here. It doesn't matter how we are sending the token. The thing that you need to remember is that the token is being sent from the server to the client. And now let us take two hypothetical examples again, like modify the address. This particular user wants to modify the address, and let us say make the payment. Same examples that we did for the server side sessions. Once the client gets that JWT token, now in every request, that JWT token will be sent to the server through the cookie. So if it is being sent through the cookie, you don't have to do anything special, because browser is going to send that particular cookie automatically. You don't have to like program it. But if you want to send it through the headers or the payload, then you will have to, as a developer, you will have to embed that token in that payload, and then that will be sent to the server. But normally it is good to use the cookies, because you don't have to do extra programming for that. Now to modify the address, what happens is that the client has already got the JWT token, so the token is going to be sent along with the address, new address that this customer wants to save. On the server side, remember that in the server side sessions, what happens is that it first goes to the session database and then checks that session is available or not. But in this case, there is nothing called a session ID. Here we have got the JWT token. So what server does is that it just decodes that token. First checks that authenticity of the token. It is not tampered. All this validation happens. And once it knows that token is right, it grabs the payload in that token. So token payload actually contains the session data, like user information or any other information you had put it in that token file. Creating that token, you can decode that information, and from there it knows like for which user this modify address request is coming for, and then it goes to this app database, modifies the address. So here it has to just contact this database just once. Okay, again, for the making payments, this JWT token is being sent to the server. Server decodes the token, it grabs that user, and then makes the payment for that user, and updates the app database. That's it. So just one connection to the database. So in the server side sessions, as we have seen, we have to do like connection with the database twice. We have to contact the database twice, one for the getting session information, and the second for making actual changes in the database. But in JWT based sessions, what happens is that there is just one database, application database. Whatever information it is getting, it is directly going to the application database. Just one extra step is there, that is decoding of the token. And that's why JWT based tokens are very faster as compared to server side sessions, but they introduce a lot of vulnerabilities. In next video, I will be explaining what kind of vulnerabilities or attacks can happen on the JWT based sessions and server side sessions. That's it in this video. If you have more questions, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching.